Hey folks, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to take a look at drawing characters. And this particular piece right here is just something that I'm currently working on. And the techniques that I'm using to create this are similar to the ones that I use to create my own characters. So let's get right into it. Let's start off by considering something as simple as a spine. So this spine here is curved. It's a simplification of the human spine. And the only thing we're going to do here is we're going to represent the shoulder blades as cylinders. We're going to represent the pelvis as a thicker cylinder. So I'll draw a few of these so that you can get an idea of the approach. We're drawing the cylinders at various angles as if one would actually be moving your shoulder blades up or down. And we can also add some tilt to the pelvis. So maybe I'll have the shoulders tilt down. I'll have the pelvis tilt like this. And this will work with both male and female anatomies, but I'm just going to show you the basic idea here so that you can begin using this right away. So adding curvature to the spine basically puts the character in motion. You're not just drawing a character standing straight up and down, right? Because that would be very static. We're trying to create dynamic poses with these characters. And with this, you'll have a part of the body that is going to be stretched. That's when the distance between one of the cylinders that represents the shoulder blade and the pelvis has a greater distance than the cylinders that are closer together. So we'll have a pinch here and we'll have a stretch here. Pinch, stretch, pinch, stretch. And then in this case, this one's a little bit tricky because of the way I'm representing it. This would be closer, but it would look a little bit strange to have it like this. So this would probably end up being useful for a view where you're looking at the character from behind. So establishing this torso is really, really important. And those of you that animate are probably already familiar with something called a flower sack. It's a common uh, tool or character, if you will, that is used to learn about animating, the torso of a character. This is basically a simplified representation of a flower sack. And how are we going to build from this? Well, we want to think of the upper arms and the lower arms as being tapered cylinders. So upper arm, lower arm. And in this way, you can really start to pose your characters in a very dynamic way. I'm not starting out with anything that's detailed. I'm simply using these cylinders to represent the position of the arms. Let's do this back view. And that's one of the things I would really greatly emphasize here. It's not about quickly trying to draw everything at once. It's really about layering up. You're building this character from an armature, and then you are coming back in and adding details. When you approach the drawing in this fashion, you get to look at a photo reference, and then you're trying to establish landmarks for the shoulder positions and the pelvis tilt. And with that, you can start to assemble a character. Now, in this particular case, I'm just free-form drawing. I'm not using an actual reference, but I'm just merely showing you this as a guide on how to think about dynamic poses. And I've covered the idea of working from references to create action poses in some of my earlier videos, so you can check that out. So from here, we've got these arms that are bent, they can be extended, but we're getting a sense of movement here, even though we don't have any speed lines or any other details that are added to this particular character. And then for the actual pelvis, and I'll just draw this in a different color so that I can, so you can clearly see what I'm doing. The legs are going to be cylinders as well. I'll draw through the form. Maybe we'll have this particular leg. And again, these are tapered cylinders. I'll have this leg bent. And again, we're not focusing on anything with detail. And this other, I'm looking at where the pelvis connects, and the legs are going to extend from that pelvis. And we'll just have this leg kind of move up, like it's getting ready to kick something. So you can start to see that we're getting some very dynamic looking poses here. Um, Typically for the kneecap, I'll just use a sphere to represent the kneecap. Usually there's going to be a space between the upper and lower leg, and that just uh, is what I use to go ahead and represent those particular elements. So when you're practicing your character poses, I think working with these cylinders can be very, very beneficial. And with that, you can draw the character in pretty much any pose you want. So let's just carry this out. I'll have a spine here. I'm going to make a copy of the spine actually so that I can show you a couple of different variations using the same line of action. The line of action is basically a simplified representation of the spine. So I could say that I want the character to be swooping down. So I can place the cylinders that represent the shoulder blades down below, and I can have the pelvis up top. In this case, I'll have one of the cylinders appear to be coming towards the viewer. And let's do something different with this one. So these two cylinders here represent the shoulder blades, and then we've got our pelvis. So the next step here is, and I'll use a different color so that it's easier to follow. In this particular case, the distance between this cap on the shoulder blade and the pelvis is longer. So we're going to have our pinch and stretch. This one's a little bit tricky, but we can see that we have stretch here and pinch. This one we're going to have definitely pinch over here and stretch. And the way that I'm determining that is I'm looking at the relative distance between the cap of the shoulder blade and the cap of the pelvis. And if that distance is closer, then we're going to have a pinch. And that pinch basically allows us to create some tension within the pose so that it doesn't look stiff, it doesn't look lifeless. And from there, I'll just use a different color to bring about the drawing of the hands and the arms and so forth. Well, actually, really the arms for this particular example. And then I can draw the legs. Again, these are the knees. And we don't even have to draw the head really to understand how this is taking place. Now, sometimes, I will look at a pose here and I could make this a pose where the character is actually, the head is kind of facing in this direction. And that can certainly work, but I feel like this might be stronger if I were to consider this as a back view. Perhaps we've got a character that is getting ready to throw some type of a punch. The other thing that I'm doing with these cylinders is you'll notice that there's a subtle thing here where instead of me just drawing two straight cylindrical lines, I'm actually making one side more curved. And we call this curved against straights. And that's something that you'll see in a lot of animation books, this idea of having a curved line juxtaposed against a straight line to make your drawing even more dynamic. So I'll actually move this cylinder here. You can see there's a curved straight, got the kneecap. And in this particular case here, we've got the arms coming out, almost like the character swooping down. And then we've got the legs that are coming up from behind. And these legs emanate from the pelvis area. So this gives you a good place to start from. Obviously, there's a lot of other details and other things that you need to add. But if you can, first of all, identify the line of action, identify the placement of the shoulder blades and the pelvis, identify pinch and stretch, I think you're going to be on the right track to being able to create a dynamic pose. Now, this can be applied to both men and women. So I'm going to leave the video with just one other important tip. If you're drawing a woman, you may want to extend the pelvis, make it a little bit wider, and then you also want to bring in the shoulder blades. And what that does is it gives you the ability to have a figure eight type of configuration, a wider waist, versus someone who is like an athletic male, where you might see a little bit more distance between the shoulders and the pelvis. And you can also simply uh, you can use this concept here if you're trying to create a character that is very heavy set too. You would just change the proportions of the pelvis compared to the shoulder blades, and then you would still have this pinch and stretch. And so it's a great way to go ahead and create characters that have multiple body types. So if you found value in this particular video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and a like so other folks can find it. I try to bring a new drawing tutorial every week. If you've got questions about things that you would like me to talk about, let me know. Thank you for all of you that have supported me by buying the brushes that I have on my website. I'll put a link to those in the description of this video in case you want to check it out. I'm using the very brushes that I'm demoing with, so you have access to the same brushes and my tablet settings as well. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.